The Blob.
The civil servants are a blob.
The Slob.
Is your political career over, Mr Johnson?
And the Knob.
Prime Minister Rishi Sunak is live in the studio to answer your questions this morning.
These are the interesting times. Hello everyone and welcome to The Interesting Times, which is a show that likes to take a sideways swipe at politics right here in the UK. Now, there's no getting away from the fact that times are tough. Rising energy costs, war in Ukraine, but there's one thing that is driving all of these factors, and it began, like so many of the bad ideas did, in Westminster.
Everybody in this country has been fooled by Brexit.
No, it's not that. It's something that's done untold damage to the reputation of this country.
But exports have been quashed because of Brexit.
No, really, not that. I'll give you a clue. It begins with a B.
So all your lies.
Not Brexit.
God.
It's the Blob. What is the Blob, you ask? A good question.
Definitely you feel that the civil servants are a blob or a block against, because they disagree. So many of them, it's terrible to talk about them all as one big mass, but so many of them seem to disagree very much with what the government is trying to do.
That was Henrietta Sargent, a journalist, but not just any journalist, a Daily Mail journalist. And the Blob is a new word to throw around to explain things that those on the right don't like, without actually explaining things. So it used to be political correctness, then it was woke, now it's just the Blob. Basically, it's a bunch of civil servants and MPs and Gary Lineker. Wait a minute, is that the Blob or the woke Blob? Not sure. Anyway, they're the ones that stopped us getting the great Brexit we were promised by not setting fire to all those EU regulations. And they're the ones making Suella Braverman speed and Boris Johnson eat cake again and again and again. Henrietta's Sargent colleague at the Daily Mail, Richard Littlejohn, wrote a piece that spoke not just about the Whitehall Blob, but the ultra-woke civil service and the woke Avengers and the wokerati and the woke police in his newspaper column with some, let's be honest, pretty disturbing imagery. Honestly, what a woker. So, a bit of retro news now, as Boris Johnson has been reported to police by the Cabinet Office. It was in turn reported by some taxpayer-funded lawyers who were part of Johnson's team looking into his handling of the pandemic. They got hold of a diary which showed a whole load of parties that happened at Chequers during lockdown. So, they reported it to the Cabinet Office, which they are legally obliged to do.
The view from the Cabinet Office is they just followed the Civil Service Code, which says that if there are any questions, possible wrongdoing, they would have to refer it to the authorities, in this case the police.
So there you go. But Johnson also has people on his side to defend him against unfounded accusations of having people round at Chequers during lockdown, such as his sister, Rachel Johnson.
As far as I'm aware, all the rules were followed whenever I went to Chequers.
And Jacob Rees-Mogg, who was also there, but he's also got the bunny boiling extraordinaire Nadine Dorries backing him.
I've got news for them. Boris Johnson has gone. And when I spoke to him at 4 a.m. yesterday morning, US time, I got the strong impression that making a return is the last thing on his mind. A few days ago, just as he was about to leave for his trip to the US, he was informed, without prior warning, that diaries compiled by civil servants, which he had not written in or had ever even seen, had been sent to the police by a high-handed civil servant.
It's ridiculous that elements in my diary should be cherry-picked and handed over to the police, to the Privileges Committee, without even anybody having the basic common sense to ask me what these entries referred to.
What do they refer to?
There is absolutely nothing in those entries that constitutes rule-breaking during COVID restrictions.
OK. Setting aside the 4 p.m. booty call, there is a simple explanation. Boris Johnson did not have anybody round to Chequers during lockdown. And we know this because Rachel Johnson and Jacob Rees-Mogg, who were both there, have confirmed it. And according to Boris Johnson, the entries in the diary definitely don't contain any confirmation of these gatherings. And Johnson knows this because he has never written in them or seen them. And besides, why is it so important for the police only to focus on the law-breaking stuff in the diaries? Oh, and he nearly died, apparently.
And let's not forget, actually, but Boris Johnson came very close to death himself. In fact, I heard recently that they were actually trying to decide which priest to call. It was that serious when he was in hospital. So
I'm guessing one that performs exorcism. So Johnson is angry about this and apparently wants to sue the Cabinet Office for referring this to the police, presumably hiring more lawyers to do so, having sacked the lawyers put in charge of briefing him for the pandemic inquiry on the advice of the lawyers that were defending him against allegations he'd lied to Parliament. And if we're honest, I think we all knew that Johnson's time in office would end in an orgy of lawyers. So you might be asking yourself, why does it matter? And can't we all move on? Well, this is why it matters.
And I explained to Johnson, listen, you know, you're a civil libertarian. I'm a human rights lawyer. If both of us are both saying the importance of lockdown, that'll cut through. That'll have people understand it must be serious if we're both saying we're curtailing people's human rights and civil liberties. But he just wasn't. He hadn't engaged in these. Cummins, to be fair to Cummins, Cummins had been thinking these things through, and you could tell. I mean, honestly, if you were a Martian in that room, you'd think Cummins was the Prime Minister, not Johnson. I was imploring Johnson, and this will come out during the inquiry, to take action, to go into lockdown. In advance of lockdown, I'd stop shaking hands, even though this guy was, bragging about his virility by shaking hands and so forth. I think fewer people may have died had we had a different Prime Minister.
Rishi Sunak sat down with two well-loved Good Morning presenters.
I think we've had nearly all the Prime Ministers on this so far.
Yeah, David Cameron, Theresa May, Boris Johnson, but this time it was Rishi Sunak.
Yeah, bar one maybe.
I'm not going to ask you what your favourite was.
Not you, mate, that's for sure. As following this show on Thursday, one of the co-presenters, Alison Hammond, had to delete a tweet showing her love for him because of a backlash on Twitter. And consider for a moment how unpopular you have to be that this morning, on the day the Philip Schofield story broke, what's angered people more than that is somebody liking you.
Right. I didn't have the easiest of in-trades when I got the job.
What part was hard? The grueling general election? The competing with your fellow candidates? Or the taking over from two consecutive prime ministers so piss poor at their job that the ability to tuck your shirt in or not tank the economy within a week is seen as a win? But Rishi really wanted to talk about immigration.
The number we're getting net immigration, 606,000. Numbers are too high. It's as simple as that, and I want to bring them down. As we saw after the pandemic, more people came back to study here who hadn't been here during the pandemic years.
Worth mentioning that overseas students contribute £36 billion to the economy. That's about 3.5 times what it would cost us to give all the public sector pay workers the rise that they've asked for. But of course, this is one of Rishi Sunak's 5 pledges. Halve the economy, raise the roof, cut the beds, grow your nose and stop the rot or something. So he's decided that there's a really good way to bring those numbers down.
It's a new policy which limits the amount of family members that people who are studying here can bring with them when they come and study here. And what we've seen over the last few years is that number of dependents has just absolutely spiralled. Almost 150,000 dependents of people who are studying here coming. We're saying from now on, that's not going to be allowed.
So international students bring billions into our economy. They also prop up our higher education sector and make it...
Not when they're bringing their mum, their brother, their sister, their daughter.
Wow, that's unbelievable.
15% of mature students bring dependents. And dependents can only be spouses and children, not their grannies, their aunties and nephews or the next door neighbour.
Yes, as I say, totally unbelievable. The latest immigration figures are at 600,000, but I think I've got the solution.
If Brexit is a disaster, I will go and live abroad. I'll go and live somewhere else.
Well, all right, that's only one. But come on, you can't deny it's a good start. And that's it. No chance to talk about the problem with the Conservative Party, according to Labour MP Sarah Jones.
The Tories might be good at a slogan, but they are rubbish at running the country.
No, I'm not having that. They are not good at slogans. They are great at slogans. Catchy, pithy, and a soundbite, not a policy, but a simple thought encased into 3 simple words. In fact, that gives me an idea. Here is the top 5 slogans as brought to you on Top of the Clots. Down 1 position to number 5, David Cameron asks, are you ready for change? 13 years of the Tories, we certainly are, David. And number 4, it's Theresa May with a acid-filled funk tune, Strong and Stable. And in between 2 ladies, not for the first time, at number 3, it's Boris Johnson with a slow number to get your partner in the mood to leave you, with Build Back Better. At number 2, but only for a short time, it's Liz Truss with Getting Britain Moving. And she certainly did. And the non-mover at number 1, no matter what his backbenchers want, it's Rishi Sunak with a headbanging Stop the Boats. So, let's rock with Rishi. No time to talk about a story that's been doing the rounds since last year about Jeremy Corbyn running for Mayor of London. But it seems to have been picked up by a few papers again as rumours have circulated about Sadiq Khan not running for a 3rd term. But if Corbyn does want the mantle of Mayor of the greatest city on earth, yes, I'm a bit biased, he's going to have to contend with Conservative MP and mayoral wannabe Paul Scully.
This is the start of 6,000 jobs in the UK using British jobs, British manufacturing, and of course British wind.
Yes, British wind. None of your foreign muck. And also Samuel Kasumu, an ex-advisor to Boris Johnson, who has some big names backing him.
Samuel has been endorsed by no less than Tory big guns Grant Shapps, Steve Baker and Priti Patel.
And with that sort of support, you can see why he's currently the bookies' 3rd favourite for the job behind 2 people who haven't even confirmed if they're running or not. No time to talk about the Speaker, Lindsay Hoyle, getting very angry again. With the Conservative Party again.
You've got to be leaving. I'm asking you to leave now, because otherwise I'll name you.
No, don't name him. That's the worst thing you can do is name Paul Bristow. Just leave Paul Bristow's name out of it. This is just the sort of thing that Paul Bristow can do without. So please, let's keep Paul Bristow anonymous. But honestly, what was that all about? Well, Paul Bristow, damn it! I mean, this anonymous individual went on to GB News and sat down with news presenter Nigel Farage to explain.
But what I actually said was when he said, let me tell you about uncontrolled immigration, I'll tell you what it looks like, I yelled, vote Labour.
Which is a strange endorsement from a member of the Conservative Party. But Paul voted for the Nationality and Borders Act, submitted questions on a committee about a company he was lobbying for, and then, to avoid accusations of a conflict of interest, handed control of the lobbying firm to his wife. So, Peterborough, come the next election, you know what to do.
Vote Labour.
Thank you all so much for watching, and if you are enjoying these vids, then please feel free to subscribe, like, and hit all the notifications bell, and I'll see you all Wednesday. Take care.